Everybody, and welcome to our meeting. Today we have guests from the United States, and we are welcoming them, and we are very excited to have them with us. And let me just say in few words the background of this meeting. So about 5 years ago, one of our members, Mari Greenfield, told me about the Czech Torah Scrolls story, which is fascinating. And we were looking for ways to make the story part of our educational work, try to use it for telling the young generation about the history of the Jewish communities in Europe. And until about a year ago, when Yaakov Ben Ze'ev joined us and took it upon himself, we didn't manage to do much. But Yaakov came with the idea of having, we called it the March of the Living Scroll, kind of a ceremony where we will take a Torah scroll and march with it in Terezin. And it was supposed to be last May 2020, which was also the 75th anniversary of the liberation of the ghetto. And so starting with the organization, I got to meet Beth. She approached us with the story of her movie made about the Torah scroll. And this is how we made a connection. Another thing I would like to add before I let you speak is that Jeffrey Ornstein, the chairman of the organization of the Memorial Scroll Trust in London, where those Torah scrolls were brought and where they are kept, he was very kind to loan Beit Terezin one of the scrolls, and it was supposed to pass to us during this ceremony of the March of the Living Scroll. It will happen in the future. So anyway, we are very excited to have here Beth Kopin and her team, and we would like to hear about your story. A few technical things before we start. All of you are muted in order not to have disturb the talk. If you have questions, please write it in the chat and we shall answer them at the end of the presentation. So I hope you will enjoy it.
My name is Mark Bennett. I'm the director of the Tattooed Torah film. And I would like to really quickly just introduce our team members to you, because as Tami said, it does take a village to make a movie. And I don't know what position, so I'll just ask the team member to wave when I introduce them. And I'll start with Beth Kopin, who is our executive producer, whose mother actually wrote the Tattooed Torah book 30 years ago. And she is the woman that approached me about making it into an animated film. And so this is a very special project for her. And it's been a long dream of hers to make this happen. Next, we have Lisa Effress. You wave, Lisa. She's our producer, and she's the person that helps make this film happen, along with her company, $11 Bill in Chicago and Colorado. And she's a dear friend of mine, and came to this project with a really strong passion about Jewish values and culture and Holocaust education, and we were very fortunate to have her. Next is Beth Kopin, who is Beth's son, who is a rabbinical student in Los Angeles, and his grandmother, like Beth's mother, his grandmother wrote the Tattooed Torah. And Brett is not only a rabbinical student, but a very talented writer. And he came along to now take the book, which is a very short children's book, and make it into a little broader story make it into a movie. So Brett was wonderful to work with, and he brought a lot of his knowledge of Jewish culture and history and the Holocaust to this. And it was very special for Brett also to work because this was his grandmother's book, and he was very close with her. In addition to that, now I'd like to introduce Martin Lemmelman. You could wave, Martin. Martin is the illustrator of the original book from 30 years ago. And we were very fortunate to track Martin down. And unlike many artists, Martin was meticulously organized and had all of the 20 illustrations from the book perfectly archivally stored, so we were able to access them. And when we were developing the story on expanding the book, we thought we would need maybe 20 or so extra illustrations to make this into an animated movie. Fortunately or unfortunately, it turned out we needed over 100 illustrations. Martin nearly had a heart attack, but he came to this project with a tremendous love for this book and this story and this message and the importance of teaching Holocaust education children around the world. So we're very fortunate to have his beautiful artwork to help make this movie happen. Then we have Jeffrey Pittle. Jeffrey Pittle is a good friend of ours, and we've worked together on many films, and he was what is called the animator, the person that takes Martin's illustrations and turn them into moving objects. And Jeffrey is a tremendously talented animator and worked very closely with Lisa Effress and her team and Christian Robbins, who's not with us today, to make this, these beautiful pictures into moving images to help tell this story. We have also Daniel Alshay. Daniel, there you go. Can you see him? And Daniel is an extremely talented composer and musician that Lisa brought to the project. And Daniel is a child of survivors and came to this project with a lot of passion, as most of us did, and wrote a magnificently beautiful orchestral score, which is the music you hear in the movie. And we were so taken by this that we were able to get it funded to go to Moscow to have a 60-piece orchestra and 30-piece choir record the soundtrack, which is the music you hear for the film. So that was extremely exciting. Daniel, Lisa, and myself got to go to Moscow. It was really exciting. And to see an orchestra that size recording the music for our little film was really, really exciting. And then just joining us below, Melinda, if you could wave so everybody sees you. This is Melinda Goldrich, who's our executive producer. She is also a child of survivors, and her family foundation is one of the major supporters of Holocaust education around the world. Places like the USC Shoah Foundation, the Los Angeles Holocaust Museum, as well as major supporters of Yad Vashem. So we were very fortunate to have Melinda as a part of this, and she brought in Steven Spielberg's foundation, the USC Shoah Foundation, to help be a presenting partner in this, so that in January, for Holocaust Awareness Month, in January of 2021, this film will be launched around the world on USC Shoah's educational website that reaches millions and millions of classrooms around the world, and is a partner with Discovery Channel, which is one of our major educational cable channels around the world. So that's all very exciting. So I think that's everybody. I got everybody. So you have an idea, and I think we'll just let everybody say a few quick words, and then we'll answer any questions. So I think, Beth, take it away.
Okay, thanks, Mark. It's always great to see the team together. It's was one of the highlights of my life, working with such an extraordinary team of talented people, bringing my mom's story and Bubby's story to life. Just really quick, my mom was an educator, and her focus was early childhood education. And she felt that it was early childhood Jewish education. And she felt it was very important, even at a young age, to teach children about the Holocaust. And the brilliance of this book, I know I sent Tami a copy, and thank God, a miracle, it actually got to Israel. So I'm hoping that she can share it in the community. This book, though, was meant to be an entry-level educational tool because the Holocaust is a hard concept even for adults to discuss. So the idea was to make a book, and the brilliance was it was all through the eyes of a little Torah. And it happens to be one of the Czech Torah Scrolls. And this Torah scroll ended up at our school in Chicago, where I actually was a student and Brett was a student. And Brett learned how to read the Torah from that scroll. So it's very personal to our Chicago Jewish community, but the most miraculous part that we've learned is that these Torah scrolls have literally been dispersed throughout the world, as Tami knows. And every community it lands in becomes an extraordinary teaching tool.
Great. And then we have Brett, who's Beth's son and the grandson of Marvell Ginsburg, who wrote the book 30 years ago. And I know this was a very special project for Brett, because he had such a close relationship with his grandmother and felt so strongly about this material. So we'll let Brett say a little bit about his experience. Take it away, Brett.
Thank you, Mark. Hello, everybody. Naim Ma'od. My name is Brett. And first, I just want to show you, this is the book. This is Martin Lemelman's cover from the 1994 version of the book. And throughout the process of making this very short book into a 20-minute movie, I was reflecting a lot about what it says in Pirkei Avot, which is one of these sections of the Mishnah, our earliest rabbinic text, which is that there is this relationship between receiving Torah, and then there is a relationship with then taking that Torah and creating it into something that is your own. And one of the things that was so special for me about doing this project was spending 11 months very, very, very closely with this book, which I've known since I was born. We've had this book in my family my entire life. And just taking this book and transforming it into something completely original, taking a simple children's story, turning it into a 3-act structure, and then taking that script, the screenplay, and then bringing it to a team of brilliant people who were just able to really bring it into to its own life, into its own world. And hopefully during the course of this call, we have the opportunity to share a little bit more about what the story is and what it entails. But as was mentioned earlier, there were over 1,500 Torah scrolls from Czechoslovakia that were salvaged after the war. They were found in a warehouse in the Mishle Synagogue in Prague. And a group from the Westminster Synagogue in London took the majority of these scrolls, and the ones that they could save that weren't too damaged, they were able to repair. Actually, a couple months after they received these 1,500 scrolls, a sofer, a scribe, showed up at the Westminster Synagogue asking if there was any work. And they said, well, actually there is, come right on in. And for the next 30 years, this man worked to repair these Torah scrolls, and then they sent them out throughout the Jewish world, around the world. And for me, that's just such a beautiful metaphor for how this story really came to be, of receiving these old scrolls or receiving this book and then now transforming it into something entirely new that a new generation can use. So it's really an honor to be here and to be with the team and to tell you a little bit more about our story.
Great, thank you, Brett. A movie cannot be made without the essential role of a producer. And a producer on the level of making the film and getting all the parts to work together is a really essential and important role. And I'd like to just let our producer, Lisa Effress, just say a few words from from Colorado.
Hello, everybody. Thank you, Mark. It is such a pleasure to be here today. I really appreciate you taking the time to hear from all of us, and it's just wonderful to see all of your faces. Mark reached out to me about, I want to say 5 years ago at this point, and had this idea for producing this film. And Mark and I go way back. We've known each other for many, many, many years. And he asked me if I would be interested, and I didn't hesitate. I immediately said yes, of course. And then when we got to talking more about it and what the content was, the story behind the book, and how it was an animated, it would eventually be an animated children's short film, I became even more interested, because at the time I had a daughter. I still have a daughter, but at the time she was about 4.5 years old. And I had not thought up until that point about how we were going to educate her on the Holocaust. It just hadn't come, it just wasn't something my husband and I were thinking about. And so when this opportunity came up, in addition to being so emotionally attached to the idea and the story behind it, I took it very personally, because I believed it was going to be a very powerful tool for me to be able to use to educate my child, who is now 9 years old, and at the point where we can start having this dialogue with her. So I was just so thrilled I am so thrilled to be part of this team. I have enjoyed every minute working on this film. It has been a labor of love. We have the most amazing team of people working together to make this happen, and I'm just so grateful. And I love having this as an educational piece for not only my child, but for children all across the world.
Thank you, Lisa. And that's actually how most people came to this project, just from the real importance of doing something to educate children around the world. And this would all not be possible without our executive producer, Melinda Goldrich, who was part of the major funding for the film that enabled this all to happen, as well as connecting us with the USC Shoah Foundation, which gives us instant worldwide distribution to classrooms around the world, which was pretty much our main goal with this film, to bring this level of education to children, which I think is more important now than ever. So if Melinda is here, there she is. Wave, Melinda. And you could turn your unmute off. Let's unmute her and let her say a few words.
Hi, it's great to meet all of you. As Mark said, my father was a survivor, and I run our family foundation, which does a lot of different types of Holocaust education. But this film is especially significant to me because I hadn't done a lot of Holocaust education directed to really young children, and hadn't really seen a lot of opportunities for that. I grew up in an era where the Holocaust education that I received as a child was very dark, and the images were photographs and videos that were a little too graphic for my age at the time. And it was more of a horror image than an education. And I think then there's been a lot of years without proper tools for adults and schools and parents to teach kids Holocaust education in a way that teaches the lessons but isn't just full of shock value. And making films has not really been, it's only recently been something that I've gotten involved with for Holocaust education, and using technology and to share it like we will with the Shoah Foundation school program. It's new for me, but I'm understanding that that is the way of the world. As much as books are amazing and children still read books, by putting film in the classroom and films available for streaming at home, that a lot more people will see this story now that we've made it into a child-friendly 20-minute film or family-friendly 20-minute film. So I'm really excited that now that we've made the film, it's gonna have a much broader audience, especially as we add other languages to it. We already have the Spanish version, and we hope to have other language versions. That will just keep broadening the base of where it goes. Anyway, thank you for everyone participating today.
Great, thank you, Melinda. And we're so fortunate to have her as part of the team, and her family foundation and Melinda's passion for this project has been just a real blessing for it. I just want to introduce one other person who just joined, who's busy working in Los Angeles, but he happens to be my cousin, and it's Greg Ferkel down there below. Would you wave, Greg? Greg is a very talented writer as well. And Greg's role in this project was to help develop the story, which means taking the story of the book and expanding a little bit to make it into a 3-act dramatic structure, from which then Brett and myself could write the screenplay. Brett pretty much writing the majority of it. But I know Greg is working today, so I'll just let him quickly say, would you like to just say something, Greg?
Yeah, first of all, I'm thrilled to be a part of this project, not just because I love working with Mark, my cousin, but also just the importance of the project itself, the reach that it's able to have, the educational piece. I think, as Mark said, my role, I consider it to be relatively small, was just to try to expand the story and give it some weight in terms of the relationship between the characters. And, we're just thrilled by the reaction to the project, and also just, again, the reach that I think it's able to have, as Melinda said, in a variety of languages. And it's not just reaching children and explaining this period of history to them, but also families in general. And so just thrilled to be a part of it.
Great. Thank you, Greg. Thank you for joining. I have 3 more team members I'd like to introduce, and one that couldn't be here today for you guys is Ed Asner, who is a pretty renowned actor of stage and screen. And he was the man who lent his voice to the narration. And Ed is a real strong supporter of Israeli and Jewish causes, like the Mitzvah Project, which takes and supports Holocaust survivors in the United States. He's also involved in many plays that are involved with Holocaust education. He's a good friend, and we were very, very lucky and fortunate to have him. His voice added such a richness to the project. So moving on, let's talk to Martin Lemmelman, who is the illustrator of the original book 30 years ago. And we are so fortunate to have him. It just was Bichette that he lived around the corner from my mother in Florida. So I was able to spend a lot of time with him and calm him down when he found out how many illustrations were needed to make the film. So Martin, please go ahead. Yeah, unmute your unmute first. It's a little button there somewhere.
Okay, there, I see. Okay. Yeah, it's my role in this project actually started in 1994, eons ago. And when I was approached to do the illustrations for the book, The Tattooed Torah, and for me, it was extremely important because my parents were both Holocaust survivors in Poland. And I thought that this would be something to bring the story home to little children. I tried to kind of bring another generation in of mine. And my son, Benjamin, was the original model of the book's main character. When Mark called me up, he told me that, don't worry about it, it's just a few illustrations, I'll come over and we'll talk, and it's a quick deal. Then he comes in, it was really nice to meet him, and he hands me this book, okay? And in the book are 100 and who knows how many pages, and I look at it, and brach, it was like, what's going on here? But Mark has calmed me down. He said, don't worry, everything will be okay. And that and a few volumes really helped make me go start the book. And I agreed to it, and because I really think that it was an exciting thing, and to bring this book to another generation, and maybe more than one generation. So I had a problem. The problem was, and I'll show you, this is an original from the actual book, okay? And this was painted with acrylic, and it takes a while to paint these kind of things. And here's another one. And so when I did these, I had about 20, 21 paintings to do. And when he told me that I had to do 100 of them, it would take me about 5 years to complete them if I did them in the same technique that I did the original ones. But I did want there to be a continuity of technique. And so you can teach an old dog new tricks, and I try to teach myself some new tricks. So what I did was I made a drawing, a traditional way of drawing on paper and transferring it on tracing paper. And then what I did was I transferred it, copied it to my computer. I scanned it to my computer and initially would paint my underpainting on my computer. I would print it out on a piece of good watercolor paper and then paint on top of that in acrylic. And it sounds very tedious, but it really helped my work. And I think that, and this is one from the newer art pieces, and you can kind of see I tried to get the same quality. And here's another. And and another. And one more. And the interesting thing about these pieces, for me at least, is I worked on this for probably at least a week, and it was on screen for about 3 seconds. So I learned it's okay. You know, I was happy in any case. So with that Statue of Liberty one, Mark had the Statue of Liberty's head cut off. And I said, oh my God, I worked on that head and he's cutting it off. So I begged him to put the head back on, and he did. So I'm happy for that. Thank you, Mark. Anyway, really, it is an honor and a privilege to work with all the people, these talented people and dedicated people. And I couldn't have been luckier. Thank you.
Thank you, Martin, and thank you for reminding me that you don't want to cut off any of your drawings. But I hope everybody's enjoying just getting a little view into what it takes to make something. And Martin is so right. When you see something on screen for 10 seconds, that could have taken weeks and weeks and weeks to make, as well as all this, all the time that went in. It took us about a year with my cousin's original adaptation of the book for Brett to write the screenplay and to even start to figure out how to make it into a movie. So it's really a wonderful collaboration. And we have 2 more team players left before we go into Q&A. So I'd like to introduce Jeffrey Pittle, a good friend of mine and an amazingly talented artist and animator. And he is the one that took these drawings and made them move in a 3-dimensional space with the help of Lisa's company, $11 Bill. So Jeffrey, would you take it away?
Absolutely. Hi, everybody. It's a great honor to be with you tonight. The project, Mark has been a friend for many, many years. And when Mark calls, I answer. He's always got something interesting to work on. And I traditionally work in entertainment, so TV and films and things of that nature. I'm a creative director as well as an animator, but I started out as a Disney animator with traditional teachings, like Martin said, drawing with pen and paper. So it was a great honor to be handed Martin's illustrations and the book and the story. I am Jewish, and so this meant a lot to me as well. My grandparents are survivors. And this was unlike anything I had worked on before. One of the challenges was Martin sent along these 20 amazing illustrations that he had painted years before, and I had to bring them to life. And so to do that, we had to cut all of the layers of his paintings apart. And thank God for Lisa and $11 Bill jumping in to assist, because we ended up with I think it was 129 pieces total, the 20 original, then 109 new pieces. And so just the layering process to create enough content to animate was probably a 1.5 year long process to get all of this done before I could even animate frame one of the film. And traditionally on something like this, you have many animators. When you watch something like Toy Story or something like that, there's hundreds of people working on something like that. Traditionally, it was just me, myself, and I, although later in the process, I was blessed to have $11 Bill and Christian, who was mentioned earlier, who's not with us tonight, jump in and bring even more life into my animations that we had done. But when you see 20 minutes of animation, it takes a long time to get there. And it was a process, one that I loved. I love working with Mark and my new family of the Tattooed Torah team, knowing what this story meant to everyone and meant to me. And we were also very blessed to have an initial screening in Chicago where we all got to meet each other in person for the first time. So this is like old home week for us. We're happy to be all back together, even virtually, with our current pandemic that we're suffering through. But I think the best and biggest thing I can speak to on this project is its longevity. It's going to be around for ages and generations, taking Marvell's original book to new places it maybe never would have seen, to new generations of children through the USC Shoah Foundation and Melinda's help to get it there. So I'm excited that this is going to live on beyond us and tell a story that we can never forget. And it's a great new media to teach it in. So thank you for having us tonight.
Great, thank you, Jeffrey. It was a very exciting and laborious working with you, but we're all very happy with the results. So last but not least, I want to introduce our composer, Daniel Alshay, also a child of survivors, originally from Israel. And it's a kind of a cliche to say that music can make a film, but it's not that far off. Music brings an emotional quality and content to a film. If you take the music away, it could be very powerful, but music just blends together with the imagery to create something that's even bigger. And we were so fortunate for Lisa to bring Daniel to the project. He was a consummate professional, a really talented musician, and was able to compose this beautiful score that then we took to Moscow to record with the giant orchestra and choir. That I had never worked with a musical component that large, so it was really exciting. And I'd love to let Daniel tell a few words before we go to Q&A. So Daniel, wherever you are, your little square. Where's Daniel's little square?
Yeah, I'll unmute myself.
He disappeared?
שלום לכולם, אני חושב שאני...
Oh, there he is. Okay.
אני חושב שאני החבר היחיד פה שיכול לדבר עברית, אבל בגלל שיש לנו הרבה אנשים שדוברי אנגלית, אנחנו נחזור לאנגלית. So, hi everyone, this is it's always wonderful to see the whole family, the Tattooed Torah family all together. And yeah, I was so fortunate to know Lisa from working on previous projects and commercial projects, and it's so exciting to work on this with everyone. When initially I got the call from Mark and we sat down and started talking, we had no idea that this would end up being such an undertaking and a beautiful, this exciting thing of being able to go everyone and record this with such a huge ensemble. And I really hope that this comes across in the film, gives it this breadth and the warmth that I was hoping it could bring. I would keep it short because I'm sure that we don't have a lot of time, but for me it was an extremely personal project. My mother is a survivor. My grandparents from both sides, both families from both my father's and my mother's side, pretty much were all gone in the Holocaust. And so to be able to contribute to this and bring my voice and kind of like just give it the human touch that I hope music can always bring to something like this, a film like this, was a great privilege and an honor. And yeah, please, Mark, take it back.
Thank you, Daniel. So in closing, I'd just like to say we're very honored to be here with you. It's amazing, the world of technology, that here we are in all our different places talking to all of you in Israel. It's very exciting. And we thank you for your interest in this film. We are all very passionate about getting this message out to the world and the importance of that this is never forgotten. And as survivors, voices will forever be told in a way, be heard in a way that is palatable, especially for young children. I can't think of anything more important to be a part of. So I'm very honored. And this team, you could see, I think you could, from listening to us, you could see that we all share this common goal of getting this message out to the world and how important that is. And I want to thank Tami and her team in Israel for inviting us and putting this together. And now we'd love to hear any of your questions that we could answer.
Okay, thank you, everybody. We would like to ask Beth if you can tell us a little bit about the story, about the book, and how did your mother got to write it, and the connection of the Torah scroll to your family or community.
I'd love to answer that question. It turns out that the president of Salman Schechter, when I was actually in 8th grade at the day school in Chicago, his parents were all from Czechoslovakia. He happened to be born in America. And his little son, Tom, who's actually one of the characters in the movie, went to him one day and said, "Daddy, I'm learning how to read Torah from this little Torah that we have, from the Torahs, and I can't pick it up." And his dad said, "I just read in a newspaper that there are Czech scrolls that were just sent to London, and I'm a businessman, and next time I go to London, I'll go and see what these Torah scrolls are all about." So sure enough, he flew to London. This is a true story. He brings it back to our school. And my mom was an educator and was very friendly with Arthur Weil at the time, and they started talking. She loved the idea, and she was an educator, and she thought, she's a creative person. She's like, "I want to try writing a children's story." So she did, and she got it published. And at the time, we had no idea that this book would become the go-to book on Holocaust education to the young globally. As I've been going throughout this world and talking about our film, people from Israel, people from Europe have been telling me that they love this book. So, and then Brett actually learned how to read the Torah from our little Tattooed Torah. So it's very personal. And actually at the end credits, if you haven't had a chance to see the movie, the end credits, there's a picture of Brett holding the Torah.
Thanks. Another question is about how do you show the movie also to non-Jewish children? Is it made for Jewish children or for whoever wants to see it?
For me or Lisa, anybody?
Or whoever
Lisa,
wants to
answer that. Lisa, would you
I'm
like to
having
answer?
a computer issue right now.
Important security message.
Give me 1 second.
Your
Brett, you want to jump in?
Sure. Yeah, no, I think that the story is definitely meant for anybody. And it's not just Jewish or non-Jewish children. It's also meant to be, like any text, it's meant to hit every single age group. So if you are a 5-year-old, you will get a certain message from the story, from the book, probably at a more basic level, but it's also designed for adults as well. And really that was our task when we were, the book functions the same way. And that was sort of our task with the movie too, of let's think globally while we create this story. So not just a particular age group and not just a particular demographic, but how do we reach as many people as possible? And that was a conversation that we had throughout the entire creative process, making this movie.
And I'd like to add, Tami, one other thing. That's a great question. This story is a universal story. And one of my first conversations with Melinda and Stephen Smith from the Shoah Foundation, their suggestion was to, first of all, in order to reach a broad audience, not just Jewish audience, but all children, it was to, one, explain what the Torah is to the Jewish people, that it's a sacred and precious item, and that at any time when something sacred is desecrated, that this is wrong. So, it was that intention that gave it a broader appeal to reach, it is about the Holocaust, but also metaphorically, it represents anything that's sacred, that is desecrated. This is wrong, and it's something important for young children to learn at a very young age. So that's a great question. I hope that the person that asked that heard our answer.
Another question that somebody wrote now. Where in the Czech Republic does the Torah come from? So maybe if you can just tell a little bit more about the story and the specific Torah that is the story is about, please.
Beth, would you
Okay.
like to?
Yeah, I'd love to. One other little thing about that other question, though, that's a really interesting point about the who's going to be watching the movie, is that Brett and Mark worked really hard to weave in Jewish terms that non-affiliated Jews and non-Jews would be able to learn from. So I think you'll find it very educational, just terms that you and I would understand, Shabbat and Bar Mitzvah and Torah, that it's all described in a very respectful manner. So globally, people will be able to understand more of the context. So I'm very proud of how they did that. And they did it in a very, very elegant, but very simple way. Our Torah comes from Brno. And I'm sure many of the people on the kibbutz are familiar. It's the second largest city, I believe, in Czechoslovakia, other than Prague. Actually, a little point of interest is that Brett and myself, part of our family, actually went there when we were making the movie because we wanted to see the community of Brno and have more of a personal connection to it. So, but this Torah could have come from any city in all of Czechoslovakia. That's really, it represents all of the Torahs, and it represents really all of each Torah. The humbling part, as you all know, is each Torah represents an entire community of people. And that's the part that is always so profound when I think about it.
One more thing to add to that. So as we know, just from all the scholarship that was done after the Holocaust, the Nazis really took meticulous notes and records on everything. And so in the movie, the number that they give to the Torah is 32804. And that's actually the number that the Torah from Salman Schechter in Chicago, the Torah that the story is about, that is the actual number that the Nazis gave to that Torah. And the reason why we know that is because they were able to find, when they salvaged these Torahs, they found the record book where they wrote the number of each Torah and the city that the Torah came from. And so it's not guesswork. It was literally when they excavated these Torahs, they found all those records. And so we know for sure that that's where the Torah came from.
Another question is about the response of people the children and the audience that already saw the movie. How did they respond to it?
Well, I can answer that question. We are, with the marketing of the film, we are following a traditional path. We are doing film festivals now. We've entered into about 60 around the world. We've already been accepted into 14, of which one we were the winners of for best adaptation of the book. And this was in, of all places, Moscow, Russia, a children's animated children's film festival, not just animated. So the film is currently doing these festivals. We have another 40 that we're yet to hear from. Unfortunately, because of these times, most of the festivals, almost all of them now, are virtual and similar to the way we're doing this now. We did one film festival in Chicago, the Chicago Jewish Film Festival, that actually took place in a movie theater, and we all flew there and did a Q&A in person. It was around the time of Purim, and we actually had a wonderful turnout. But then, as you all know, things changed very rapidly in March, and now it's all virtual. But the film has been seen by a few thousand people, and if you go to the website, which maybe you could circulate, www.tattooedtorah.com, you could see all kinds of the laurels from the different film festivals. There's a whole page of reviews from people around the world, and we would really welcome any comments from you. If you could send them in to us, we'd love to add them to our list. And like I said before, we're very excited in January to launch this thing worldwide, which will make this film available to millions and millions of school children around the world. So the film is being seen by more and more people every day. And every day we're getting closer to our goal of reaching as many people around the world as possible.
And
If I
Mark,
could just jump in.
okay. So sorry, go ahead.
No, you can go ahead.
No, I just wanted to add that the team, everybody, we're all working on getting the film translated into additional languages. We have a beautiful Spanish version, a Spanish translation. Some of it is dubbed and some of it is just subtitled, but that will hopefully be able to reach many children in many communities, many different countries, and expose the film all around the world.
Yes, and if I could just jump in, I'm sorry about my little computer glitch earlier, but I believe the question was about the general response that we've been getting on the film, and if I could circle back to what I was saying earlier about my daughter, who is now 9, she is my biggest fan and my harshest critic, and she has been so engaged in this whole process and so curious, and just to see our film generate so many questions in her little mind and the minds of her friends and even other kids who, you know, in Chicago that don't know her. It has been just incredible, because I do believe that it opens up a whole story and experience that these kids haven't been exposed to prior. And so just seeing her expressions and the way that she watches this film, she's now seen it several times, her and her friends, and it's remarkable. And I think for me personally, to be able to reach children of that age in the way that we've been able to do so has been so rewarding and so incredibly meaningful.
Can I say something? When we were in Chicago, we also did a number of other viewings, and we had in one viewing in a synagogue, we had a number of age groups from teens to younger kids, and it seems like it does go throughout the ages, because the older kids were enthralled. One of the younger kids said we should win an Academy Award, which was kind of nice. So it was a very nice experience to see that it's not just geared to one type of age.
I'd like to add one thing. That's Martin just reminded me. The first 2 screenings of this film we did at the Illinois Holocaust Museum in Chicago for about 200 people in their state-of-the-art theater with mostly adults, which was amazing, because a lot of those people that attended actually knew Marvell when she was head of education in the Jewish school system. They were teachers. So it was really interesting. But the other 2 screenings we did were at a synagogue that Martin just mentioned with young children, and then the school where the actual Torah lives, where we had about 600 people, families and mostly children, in a gymnasium where we showed it on 2 screens. And so I wanted to just mention the 2 things that really stuck with me from those screenings were, first of all, we did a Q&A after the synagogue, smaller audience, and a young girl, about 8 years old, asked us if the boy in the film ever got bar mitzvahed. Now, I don't know who here has seen the film yet, but that is a major part of the story because the boy is practicing with this Torah for his bar mitzvah when the Nazis invade and everything just gets out of control. We never in the story ever come back to that. But for that young girl at 8 years old to ask that question was so emotional for us because it showed that she got it and that she was engaged in the story and was empathizing with what happened to that young boy, that practicing from his bar mitzvah is interrupted by World War II, the Nazis, the Holocaust. And the other really thing that stood out was Beth's husband, a very notable doctor in Chicago, was at the screening with the 600 people, mostly children, at the school. And he noticed he was in the front row, and in front of him was a group of about 20 or so 10, 11, 12-year-old children sitting on the floor. Before the movie started, they were normal children, you know, talking, moving, fidgeting. But once the movie started, and he said he told us this after, he observed these children, they were glued to the screen. They didn't move, they didn't fidget, they were glued to it. So that was the second most, meaningful thing for us, that it really showed us that these kids were being engaged by what we created. And as filmmakers and also people with a moral objective here to get this messaging out, I couldn't have think of anything more rewarding than to see those two reactions, both to the story and to overall of this film. So it just kind of made us feel like we're doing the right thing, and it's an important one. Tami?
Yeah, another informational question is there a list available made by the Nazis containing all the numbers allotted to the Czech Torah? I think it was mentioned, but if you can say a few things about it again.
As I was saying before, the Nazis took very meticulous records of everything during the war, and we don't know for sure why they wanted to collect over 1,500 scrolls. There is some background that there were some wealthy Jews in the Czech Republic that wanted to salvage these Torahs before, or preserve them before the war really broke out. But what we do know is that the Nazis did keep a very long record log of all the Torahs that they confiscated from synagogues around Czechoslovakia. And then they wrote where each Torah was from, the city that it was from, and then they also recorded the number that they wrote onto the Torah scroll. So that's how we know where all these Torahs came from. And if you actually go to the Czech Memorial Trust website, I think if you type in the number of any of these Torahs, so if you have one of these Czech scrolls, and if you want to look up information on the scroll, they have a whole database of information on all these Torahs. So it's really fascinating, and we have this information because the Nazis felt like it was important for whatever reason to preserve that information.
Thank you. I think we don't have any more questions. Many people are asking about watching the movie, so Ella just put in the chat the link to the movie, and with the code, which is open for a short time. I don't know, Beth, how long, but you will be able, those of you who did not watch the film, you will be able to watch it. Are there any questions that somebody wants to write in the chat? Okay, so I would like to thank you very much for the interesting talk, and I think you're doing a very important project, and I invite you all, when COVID-19 is behind us, to come and visit Beit Theresienstadt, and we would love to continue the cooperation and to have it going on. So thank you very much, and good evening.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Good night, everybody.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.